Hello and welcome to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and as the founder of the Bold Life Movement and a fellow coach for more than 7 years, I know the challenges that many of you face when launching or growing your coaching business. And I'm here to pull back the curtain on the coaching industry and help you overcome roadblocks to make the impact you were born to make. Each week, I'll be interviewing successful coaches from every corner of the industry to share exactly how they have managed to generate massive impact and income. From strategy to psychology, we cover it all. This show is presented to you by Transformation Academy, a global marketplace of courses and coaching certifications. So whether you are already part of our epic community or you're brand new to this show, if you're ready to learn what it takes to turn your passion for service into a profitable business, then keep listening. You are in the right place. Welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. This is episode 47 with Emily Cassel. I'm super thrilled because this episode is a little bit different than the other conversations that I've had because Emily has managed to create a really strong standalone brand that she evolved from her personal coaching brand after 8 years of doing it one way and deciding that her vision was actually bigger than what she could create inside of a personal coaching brand. And so in today's conversation, we talk about why she made this shift, how she created such a nourishing, powerful, potent community of women, how she's targeting people that are in so many different industries, and what it is that she's learned in the process. So if you are someone who's feeling the call to be a service-oriented business owner and you know that you want your vision to expand beyond just one-on-one coaching, then today's conversation is going to be for you. And I love this dialogue because I just love Emily. So without further ado, let's introduce the one and only Emily Cassel. Hello and welcome back to the Profitable Coach Podcast. I have with me my dear friend, Emily Cassel, soon to be Copeland. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is such a joy on my Wednesday to get to record with you.
I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since we met at a business retreat in Colombia. Emily and I just immediately hit it off because we both are former cheerleaders, 7 Enneagrams, have the silliest things in common. And it was really nice to get to pull back the curtain and sort of prepare for this conversation because Emily is a genius. She's a business badass is the word I keep telling her as we've been leading up to today's conversation. And so I'm just really excited to share some of her wisdom with you guys. So Emily, one of the things that I want to start off with is what was your catalyst moment for finding the world of coaching or business strategy is another thing that I know that it falls under your umbrella. What was that moment for you?
That moment for me was I was attending college. I was studying psychology. I was majoring in psychology, double minoring in marketing and sustainable food systems at an all-women's college. And I was searching through the major and searching through courses every semester and looking for the place that I was like, this is the work I want to do. And it wasn't until I found a course in positive psychology that was led by one of my favorite professors, which was very fortunate. And that just digging into my studies in that course was a light bulb moment. It was a pivotal moment for me. And I remember going to him in his office during office hours and just being like, okay, I know I'm supposed to get my master's in counseling right away and do this 3-2 program and do this expedited master's. And I was like, but I want to do this. So how do I do this? And he was like, well, you could do research in the field of positive psychology, or you could be a coach. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of see myself actually working with people, even though I do love data and I could nerd out on that. And that would be fun too, and rewarding too, in a totally different way. But when I think about the career that I wanted to build, it was really more hands-on with people, supporting them to make changes in their life and create more fulfillment along the way. And he was like, well, then you can be a coach. And basically there's no real path for that established. So good luck.
Do what you want.
Yeah, I was like, all right, cool. Well, I thought I wanted to start a business anyway, which is why I was, studying marketing and taking all these business classes on the side. So, and interning for female business owners in Pittsburgh. So that was a really interesting moment for me where it was simultaneously like everything snapped into place and made so much sense. And the path I thought I was walking ended promptly. And it was like, well, here's this new trail you get to blaze. There's really, there are some people doing it, but all the coaching programs at that time, which was 2013-ish, 2012, 2013, they were like, very executive certification through a university or, IIN was a thing at the time, but I was like, I don't really want to do just nutrition. So it was a wild west of Google searching to really find an option that I could afford on a very limited budget and self-fund, and B, that I could, actually feel connected to the mentor leading it. So that's my experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even know about coaching back in 2013. And when I found it, I think it was August 2015, it still felt like it was just starting to get legs. And there were all these new coaches and new programs for coaches popping up. So I really honor you as a straight up pioneer, because 2013 is early days. That's like OG status.
It really feels like it. I feel like I've seen so many shifts in the industry over the last decade that have been really fascinating to witness. And I think we'll get into this, but I think that's really one of the things that has helped me innovate within the coaching industry and really be disruptive in a positive way is to understand the landscape of the industry over the course of a decade and see where are the gaps, or where have things kind of gone off the rails a little too much, or what was, what's really happening, and just tracking trends, but also understanding what is timeless about it. So
I love that. So can you speak to that a little bit? I'd love to know what are some of the things that you think have gone off the rails, and what are some ways that you feel like you have been disruptive in this industry?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, if we had 20 hours, I could still be talking about this, but for the intents of this podcast and time frame, I would say there's a lot of, there's a lot of building cults of personality that really center the coach and leader. A lot of inflated ego, and it's become less about actually serving the client and less about actually doing really great work. And I think more about flashy virtue signaling and wealth signaling and all of these things. And sometimes, I'm not shaming the fact that you should be able to do great work and make great money. Awesome. Yay. That's what we're all trying to do in the world. I think, there's no problem with that, but I think there has been this trend toward, moving away from really client centered and moving toward coach centric. Branding, marketing, business, it's become very much the best way I know to say it is sort of these little cults of personality that people become very obsessed with. And there's, all the things that kind of fall out from there, which is pedestalizing, and then the only way to go is down. There's just a lot of things. And I think there's also a lot of, unethical practices that I don't know if they still are, but there's a lot of unethical practices that have seeped into the coaching industry through adjacent industries that have, how do I want to say this? I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here.
I love
these
it.
Are
I'm like, you can go
issues,
here.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of very like manipulative marketing and sales tactics that have slipped in that people don't really know where they've come from. They've kind of been adopted as industry standard practices, but they're actually like cult recruitment techniques, which is not,
I mean, we can see that.
Empowered. Yes. And you can see that, and you can see where people, you know, we don't really know people online. We have all of these, you know, parasocial relationships, and we don't really know their deepest beliefs all the time. And so there's just a lot of like strange, I mean, just in general, the online space right now has become so polarized and so polarizing, and people get, you know, down these algorithmic rabbit holes of indoctrination on anything. So I think that, and that's a function of the time we're living in and the technology as well. And I think the coaching industry is not untouched by that. So I think as coaches, we really have to be vigilant and diligent about how are we walking in integrity? How are we, you know, shifting our industry or maintaining the core of it, because it is so unregulated. And how do we keep that freedom while also maintaining integrity for the industry as a whole? And I think that's a really tough thing to do, because integrity for every person looks a little bit different. And so we can't just police integrity as a blanket statement. And I think that's kind of a lot of the issues that I see we're bumping up against in the industry is like, what's actually okay? You know? And nobody's telling us because it's unregulated. There's no real, you know, standard. So
I love this conversation because it's so different from any of the other conversations I've had on this podcast. And I know that we both come from a community of personal brands and people leading with embodiment. And there's like so much to be said for that. And I also have witnessed inside your business that while there's a degree of personal brand, you also have WMNûP that stands very much apart from Emily. And so I'd love for you to be able to speak to and we're going to get back to how you've disrupted the industry, and maybe this is the answer to that. But
I think this might be the answer.
Well, what advice would you give to people who don't have a separate brand that they've created? Like their personal brand is the business. And then, how have you, or why have you decided to go the other route, and what has that provided?
So for eight and a half years, the first 8.5 years of my business, I was a personal brand. And 2 years ago, I decided that I started to expand my vision, and it started to feel like a personal brand didn't have enough space for me to really do all the things, to really hold all the things that I knew I wanted to create, and that the vision I was moving toward. And so I knew I needed to make a change. And at the same time, I was noticing and educating myself and learning and seeing all of these like holes in the coaching industry, and seeing like, oh, wow, I really don't agree with that. But yeah, I guess that is sort of like industry standard. And that I could see how that would be really not great or healthy for me or other people, like for the coach or the client. Maybe that's setting everybody up for a funky dynamic. And so I really started learning, deep diving. There were a couple months where I literally was just like, okay, let's like go to school on everything that's happening and what's not working, and really talk to people and do a ton of market research and figure out what's not working here. How do we reshape this so that it comes back to the principle of like really actually being useful, empowering, helpful, of service, impactful in a positive way, that we don't end up creating unintentional dynamics that are actually disempowering under the guise of empowering. Just really unpacking a lot of these things. And so I was doing that. And what I came to the conclusion of through that research, through my market research, and through the expanding of my vision that all kind of coincided, was I wanted something that was bigger than me. I wanted to build a brand that was bigger than me, and that felt like it could really be that a lot of women that I love working with and that I have loved serving over the past, now 10 years, 10 and a half, would be able to identify with and feel like they had a piece of, right? That they could actually identify with and feel like it was really about a community and a space that was ours, not mine. And while, of course, the WMNûP brand is essentially mine, like I own it, I am a sole proprietor, right? Like I am an S Corp, I own this company. And I am driving the vision, and I am hiring the people, and I am, the source of revenue and all of that stuff. The actual mission is so much bigger, and to feel connected to that every day helps me in the moments where I'm like, what's the point? Like, what am I doing again? We just kind of like forget one day and we're like, wait, what am I doing? That has happened so much less, I will say, since I have created a brand that is way bigger and has a sense of identity outside of myself, because it helps create this almost healthy distance, at least it has for me, where it's like I exist here as a person, and almost, the way that I think about my personal brand versus my, business WMNûP brand is that they collaborate with each other. There's crossover, there's a lot of intersection, but also, my personal brand is almost like living proof and, almost like the primary influencer, if you will, of WMNûP, right? Because I'm then tasked with really living into my mission and my values and sharing what that path looks like to lead a company that does all of these things for other women as well, and that shares these principles and values, and to talk about like what is a WMNûP moment, and how do I navigate those things, and how do we work with resistance, and what is the infinite upward spiral of evolution, and how do we create that, and why community, and why this is the missing piece, and how do we actually fill these gaps, and what are the gaps for women entrepreneurs. So I think the advice that I would give is, if you feel like your vision is so much bigger and you want to build something that has the potential to be able to bring other people in, to build a team, to not just hire necessarily other coaches beneath you, because I think that's one model in the industry that's pretty common, but I'm still kind of like, I'm not sure if I'll ever really do that. But there are so many more creative, interesting ways that we can create a scalable, regenerative business that actually withstands, so many different seasons of life and phases of growth. And I think that's maybe a primary key difference. Like I see so many people, so many coaches who like, they have all this excitement in the beginning and then it's sort of like fades out, right? Or it burns bright and fast, and then it's like they had $100,000 launch and then never again. So there's like this lack of real sustainability. And I think in order to have that, you have to have a mission that's so much bigger than just you. And sometimes I think people get in their own way when they're too close to it, when they feel like over-identified with the brand and the business, and there isn't a clear separation, or there aren't healthy boundaries. It's almost like you're not sure where you end and the business begins, because in a lot of ways you are the business, but also you're not. Like there are parts of me that are not, like my marriage is not necessarily my business. Like those two things, those two parts of my life are pretty separate in a healthy way. So yeah, I think if you're feeling that, or if you're feeling like you really want to build something that has the capacity to grow and expand and scale beyond you, I think, not that you can't do that as a personal brand, because you can, but I think there is a different, um, there's a different essence, there's a different flavor to building a business that is not you at the center.
Totally.
And that has the mission at the center that other people can kind of like sink their teeth into more and feel a part of in a way that's really positive. So
I love that. And so when you
yeah.
decided to shift from personal brand to creating something bigger than yourself, WMNûP, what were the steps that you had to take? And who were some of the first people that you brought in to support you? Because it's a pretty big operation now. I have to imagine you have some level of support.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because in a lot of ways, the work itself didn't change that much. The format and the structure of the work changed, the branding changed, all of that. It felt in a lot of ways like starting over, even though I was like, it's one of those things I think that feels so huge and significant. And like from the outside, probably also looks that way. And then also when you look at it very objectively, you're like, I've been doing the same things kind of this whole time, but like in different formats and like moving pieces around and refining it and evolving it and shifting it. But like the core thread of the things that I've done, masterminds, communities, always working with women entrepreneurs, private coaching, like all of those things have gotten shuffled around, but they, the core has always been the same. And the core has really always been lifting, building, leveling women up in business, life, and leadership. And I wasn't as forthright about that in my branding. It was almost like at the time I had been marketing myself more as like a soulful business coach. And I was like, you know what? I had this reckoning moment. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it was in this process where I was like, literally, that is not the most powerful part of working with me. Like the most powerful part of working with me is actually that I'm super strategic and I'm really great at business and I can really pull out the leadership qualities in someone and help them really expand and explode and evolve their business in really powerful ways, and also help them with like the big visionary picture and how can they be in that like CEO mode, but also with the very tactile, like tactical in the moment. Okay, start here. Here's exactly the next step. Working through the resistance, the inner, the outer, the strategic, all of the pieces fitting together and building that business ecosystem that feels super harmonious for that unique person with all of the different context of her life. So,
and is this any business?
I was like,
any industry?
Yeah, which is the most fun part for me. I love and one of the really cool parts of our spaces and what's different about WMNûP is that, we have women in, launching, growing, scaling. We have women from all types of industries. There was someone who reached out today who was like, hey, I have a co-founder and we're a nonprofit. Can I still join? Would this be beneficial for me? And I'm like, yes, because we aren't. Another thing that I found was really a big problem that I was seeing in the industry is this sort of like echo chamber creation where innovation dies. So these sort of like very specific, and there's a phase of that that's like very helpful, I think, for some people. But I know for me, the way that I think, the holistically minded, the wanting to do things differently, like with intention and innovation, and knowing that I would identify as like a very multidimensional woman who wants to build a thriving business, not just in my industry, but in general, not just like, I want to learn how to build a coaching business. I'm like, no, I want to learn how to build a great business that happens to be in the coaching industry, but that disrupts it and makes it even better, like raises standards here. So I think there's a distinction there for the women who join WMNûP that are like, I want to build an excellent business and I happen to be in this industry. But the coming together and the bridging of those, like crossing industry lines and not recreating echo chambers of industry is, I think, one of the most awesome things about what has been created through WMNûP and through our community specifically, because we have people who are doing all different kinds of things. So they're not direct competitors. It's like, oh, I need somebody who does this, or I want to collaborate with a product-based business who does this kind of thing. And, oh, I'm looking for a guest for my podcast to talk about this, or, oh, I'm looking for a referral for this, or, oh my gosh, like this happens every day in the community, which is so cool to see, because it's like this weaving, right? This like actual weaving of threads of community that then builds a really strong container, like a basket that can hold so much more. And we all get to be part of that. So we're all strengthened by it. And I think that is one of the coolest things, because where do you go and find that level of diversity of true collaborations that actually make sense, because you're not just in a room with people who are exactly like you, who are doing exactly the same things, who are trying to basically compete, even if we don't believe in competition. Essentially, we're all kind of going for the same thing. We're probably having the same kinds of conversations. We're probably talking about the same things. But when you bring people together who are, you know, crossing those lines and cross-pollinating ideas, well, now we've got like hybrid, you know, concepts emerging that never existed before. And that is where innovation happens. And that is where disruption and, you know, where you really can find the gaps in the industries and the conversations and the things and truly be distinctive and stand out, versus create more noise or create more of the same. Or, you know, there's a thing called, you know, blue ocean strategy versus red ocean strategy. And, you know, really finding the spaces that are open and available for change or to be served. And I think a lot of the way that the industry operates is bringing people together around sameness. And in a way we do that, right? Because there is this uniting thread, but then also really tending to how much diversity can we have here so that it makes sense to foster collaborations between everyone. And you kind of, every day, it's like truly limitless what's possible.
I love it. My exposure to personal growth started with entrepreneurship. Like that was what preceded personal growth, which preceded spirituality. That's my journey. And I come from a community management background. I used to run an entrepreneurial community that was global, all location independent business owners. And so finding myself in the coaching world, which as you described can feel like an echo chamber, has been really dampening to my creativity in so many different phases of life. And so this conversation alone is like just sparking something inside of me and like reawakening this like connection to a bigger vision. There's so much more happening in the world than just coaching. Not to like shit talk on coaching, but to help people understand that like being multidimensional and putting yourself in these other types of rooms can be really productive for your coaching. So I want to know, I want to know how you built this community, because I know that that's like a huge part of the business model is bringing all these women together.
Right. So a couple ways. One, like I said, I had already been operating as a personal brand for 8.5 years, and I was, you know, running groups and programs and events and all kinds of things for women in business and leadership. So I had a foundation already built and established, and people kind of knew to expect that from me, whether I was being very on the nose about it or not. That's just kind of like what I was always doing, whether it like fit within the brand or the personal brand or not. Like most people probably aren't with a personal brand driven to do those kinds of things, but I always was. So that's kind of interesting, I guess. And then right after the pandemic, so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and here it was pretty not super, tight regulations, but a lot of things had stopped happening. A lot of gatherings had stopped, or a lot of people had just gone online, or a lot of people had, there were like networking groups for women and different things here that just like fell off or disappeared entirely or just went online. And I had always been online. I've always built my business like that, and then done little like in-person things here and there, retreats, events, gatherings, things like that. So around that time, I was starting to feel like my now husband and I, we had bought our house. I was like, okay, I'm like very established here. And at the same time, we had all these new people moving here from all over. It was like this big influx that was happening at the time, and probably still is and will continue, because it's like the best place to live. Like, not even from my own biased perspective, but actually been rated like one of the best places to live. So yes. So I wouldn't disagree. However, that's like more of an objective than it sounds. So yeah, I was starting to feel kind of like insular and isolated. And I was like, there are so many, I would see on Instagram, like, oh my God, this woman is here. That's so cool. Like, I want to meet her. And I bet you we're all feeling like this, because where are people going to meet each other right now? If it's not just like reaching out on Instagram or happening to run into each other, which if you have your AirPods in and you're working at a cafe, are you really like meeting people and striking up a conversation when everybody's working? No, of course not. So there wasn't like a space or a forum to actually connect. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. So I started just bringing people together and saying like, hey, let's meet for coffee, this week at this time, at this place. We'll just kind of like pop up at a coffee shop and we'll just wing it and we'll just connect. And like, if you know of someone who should be there, invite them. And I just had like a Google Calendar invite, and I would add my people and they would add other people, and people started coming, and it was awesome. And it was, we just started doing that. We just started having these like meetups regularly, once a month, every month. And that was, I think I started that in like February of 2022. And is that right? Maybe. And it started gaining a lot of momentum and traction, and people started like paying attention, and it didn't even have a name. It was just like Women Entrepreneurs Meetup, like very general. And it just kind of started to snowball a little bit. I was like, okay, there's something here. People are loving this. They're saying really great stuff about it. They love coming. They're coming back. They're bringing people. They're telling people about it. They're talking about it. And then from that, there was this emergent desire of like, hey, could we do this? Could we have a Slack to stay in touch between like meetings? Or like, this person isn't here this week, but last month they were here. And can we have some kind of space to like connect between? And I was like, that's interesting, maybe. And then, we kept doing these, we kept doing. And every single month I'd host a meetup. And then I started building, this like group almost. And then I was like, well, what would you want? And I just started talking to them about like what would be really helpful and what kind of spaces and what kind of conversations would you want to have. And so I started to build the framework for the community. And then in what must that have been, like 2 years ago, in July, around this time of year, 2 years ago, that's when everything started happening with Roe v. Wade being overturned, with all of our rights being rolled back, with it starting to look really dystopian for women. And I was just like, honestly, like, if this is not going to go down this horrible direction, like, we need to gather. Like, we need to gather the women, get them together. Like, women entrepreneurs are great problem solvers. We need to figure out the things together. And like, we need to build strong businesses that allow us the space and time and creative freedom to actually solve the world's problems. Like, we need to be doing this. So, it's at the beginning, I was like, maybe this has like a social mission. Maybe this, who knows what it will become. And so now it's really evolved every single year. We continue to add more value to the space and create quarterly live events, collaborate with our members, feature them everywhere, like really give them opportunities to collaborate, to be visible, to share our platform, to get their work out there, to refer and hire each other, to understand how to better collaborate with one another, to have access to the tools and resources and fractional support and space between sessions, to connect, to have a monthly, hot seat coaching from me. There's just so much. It's very robust. And that has come through really like an emergent conversation with our members specifically to say, like, what do you actually need? And then responsively being able to add those components in as we have the capacity as a company to be able to add more. So that's kind of how it's come to be.
I love it. I want to circle back to a question that I asked earlier about bringing on support and hiring to help grow this mission. So maybe in that same conversation, you can share, like, what is your current product suite and how can people plug into it?
Yeah. So it's fun that we're having this conversation because this week I've actually brought on an extra person. 2 weeks ago, I brought on somebody else. So we're really in a phase where
get it, girl.
I've recognized that I'm like, thank you. I'm like the bottleneck at this point. And I know that there's such a big vision. There's so many things that I want to do and create. And there are so many ways we could be doing it even better and optimizing what's already working. And so I've brought on a business manager. I've had a virtual assistant who's been with me for 20 hours a month, which sounds insane, actually, to know that that's like 5 hours a week. And we've been doing this together. Essentially, I've had some contractors to do other things. But essentially, I've had me, a virtual assistant, for 20 hours a month. And that's been the last 2 years for the most part, plus a couple contractors here and there as well. And then I just brought on an OBM, an online business manager, 2 weeks ago. And then another assistant who's able to do 20 hours a week, so 80 hours a month. So in the last 2 weeks, I've added 115 hours of capacity to the team beyond myself, which feels really huge and significant. Like there's actually space to expand into now. So that's
real
what
quick.
team
Will you
looks
speak
like.
to what, for people who are like kind of new to the idea of scaling and the idea of only staying in their zones of genius, what are some examples of things that you would give to an OBM, and what are some examples of things that you would outsource to someone who's taking 20 hours a week from you now?
Oh gosh. Well, I feel like this, it's like such a challenging thing to just name because so many, in my experience, I've worked with so many different online business managers and so many different VAs over the last 10 years that all kind of do things a little bit differently. They all have different areas of genius themselves, and they all have different ways of working, and they all have different things that they're truly great at. And so I think part of it is understanding and having really clear expectations and roles and responsibilities lined up before you bring somebody on, and knowing where their skill set fits within the gap of yours and what the business needs. So that was really important to me. Currently, what I hand to my business manager or my OBM is more like I'm able to say like, hey, I want to set up, I'm able to give her like an idea, very high level, and then she will be able to like take it and run with it and execute, or be able to delegate the parts of that to other team members that need to happen to keep us on track. So she's almost like project manager, understanding timelines, looking at the bigger picture with me, and then taking my like visionary ideas and being able to be like, okay, cool. Yep. I've got this. And here's how we're going to make it happen. And here's what I need from you along the way. And we'll get it out. So it's really nice. And then for my assistants, 2 of them, they kind of, I've changed one of their roles. So my existing assistant is now kind of moving into more of a community management, client, like customer service specific role. So she's more client facing. And then my other VA who's doing 20 hours a week is now more on the like admin stuff. So like podcast production and management, pitching podcasts, fielding, like scheduling things, all those kinds of like nitty gritty admin things, and like creating graphics for social, or those kinds of pieces that happen more behind the scenes versus the client facing stuff.
Love it. Love it. So then in terms of your product suite and how people can join the WMNûP world, what they might get at the different stages of it, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a couple different ways to plug in. The first, where I would recommend, like, is a fit for everyone. Like, start here and then decide what you need, because there is so much. That would be the community by WMNûP, which is sort of our, like, I like to call it like a vibrant ecosystem, because really the goal is that it acts as an extension of your business growth efforts. So we have things in there like fractional support from me, from a lawyer, from an accountant, from health and wellness, functional medicine people, so that you can get every and any question answered throughout your business growth journey. We also have virtual assistants available on demand. So you don't have to hire someone with like a, expensive monthly retainer. You can just jump in and say like, hey, I need support with this. Who's available to help me? And they can do that. So that's a more budget friendly way to start delegating, to get some things off your plate, to start getting in the habit of that, and to stay on track, and while staying in your zone of genius. There's also over 100 hours of amazing trainings from me on business and leadership development, strategy, all that kind of stuff. Daily coaching from me every day this year. Events that you get access to for free as a member that happen quarterly in person in Charleston, and also opportunities to apply to collaborate with us as part of those events to put your business in the spotlight. We're also rolling out a really cool like multimedia promotional package that'll be free for all of our members across all of our platforms. So that's really exciting and coming up. We'll probably start rolling that out next month. And there's so much. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm always, whenever I run through this list, I'm like, there's more, I know. But if I tell you everything,
this is your
your
low
brain
tier.
will explode. Yeah, this is $97 a month currently until the 23rd of June. So if you're listening to this and you're a female founder, come join us, because you'll never see that price again. I've calculated it. It's over $80,000 in value per year that we provide for our members. And it also will save you at least $20,000 a year in common business growth expenses, just like right off the top. So that I'm very, very proud of what we've created. That's sort of our core, like foundational, everybody plug in and get what you need, and then see what you need from there. So then I offer a 90-day private business evolution intensive, which is really the space where I get to get my hands in there, really bring my strategic brain. I almost explain it like I'm like a fractional business partner, like a chief strategy officer who comes in for 90 days and just like helps you expand, understand the gaps. I audit the whole business. And then we do a series of 5 total sessions over the course of 90 days. And then we wrap it up together, and we have Voxer support between, and just like super hands-on support as well for anything that you create during that time. So I'm looking at and reviewing and adding comments in Google Docs and things as you're creating sales pages and all this stuff, whatever needs to happen. So that's awesome, because it really meets people exactly where they are. It might be awesome if you're just starting and trying to figure out like, how do I start the business I actually want to start and lead and grow into? Or I've built something and now I'm ready to scale it, or I'm ready to expand, or I want to add offers that are more scalable. So it's kind of a, catch-all for private work together. And then I have my annual leadership mastermind that happens once a year. We open doors in the fall. And I also am building out a program called Momentum, which is a 6-month mastermind experience that sort of lives between the community and my higher tier mastermind at that level of investment. And the higher tier mastermind includes private coaching. It includes an international retreat. It's just like a really lovely experience start to end where you feel super supported for the year in your business. And a lot of people, I have clients who have continued for 3 consecutive years. So that's been awesome to see too, because we're evolving together. And as you grow and expand your business, it really gets to meet you there. So that's, the community by WMNûP is really the place to be because you get access and first dibs and special exclusive pricing on everything else. So if you're thinking about anything, I would just jump in there and then we can figure out what you need later. Once you're in and kind of get a feel for what's available, because also I'd rather people jump into like $97 a month and have feel so mind blown and supported by that, and maybe not even need what they thought they needed in the first place and really be served without, a huge investment if that's not what's really needed. So yeah,
I love it. I love it.
The ecosystem.
We'll definitely have all of that linked up in the show notes. And a couple other things that I wanted to touch on before we wrap is this multi-dimensional part of you that I so resonate with. You have a shop on your website where people can buy merch for WMNûP. So would you peel back the curtain for our listeners? Because I have a lot of coaches I've worked with who are like, I want to have a journal. I want to have like a whole other arm of the business. How could they execute on something like that?
Well, collaborate, number one. That's one of the coolest things I think about WMNûP and what's been built is like we have somebody who makes jewelry. So she could create a signature necklace for us with our logo on it. That with like our brand colored beads that are super fun. So that's one way is like collaboration, find the people, build real transformational relationships with people who are excited about what you're doing as well and who are open to collaborating in that way. I've also we did a limited run with Keep Cup, which is a female owned sustainable coffee cup brand, essentially based out of Australia. So we did that for our branded cups. And then other than that, members really asked us. They were like, we need t-shirts, we need sweatshirts, we need these things. So we just, like I said, it's been very emergent. It's the cups made sense as a first product because we meet up and drink out of cups. So it was like, oh, and then it was nice because it's like, oh, you can actually spot each other. They're kind of bold and loud in color. So you can spot each other in the wild and know, oh, that's a WMNûP member because it's very distinct. It stands out.
But I think the thing that comes even before that, which you said, it's emergent, is the culture that you've created, the identification that your members have with being a part of something so meaningful and powerful. So I think that is kind of like step one.
Yeah. And I think the prerequisite step to that is really having a vision that's big enough to inspire people and have them feel part of it. Because they're like, I want that too in the world,
Exactly.
And in my life. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, I could continue picking your brain for a million more hours, but I know that you have totally. I'm always about returning members. So before we wrap, please go ahead and tell everyone where they can go get more information about you, where they can sign up for the community. We'll have all of these linked up in the show notes as well. But if they want to just go follow you online, where can they do that?
Yeah, you can come find me on Instagram, either at WMNûP, which is spelled WMNûP, or at Emily Cassel Official. And spelling will be linked in the show notes so you can find it. I'm also tagged in the profile of WMNûP currently. And so you can find me there. And then also, of course, on our website, which is womannûp.co.
Amazing. I love it. I'm so in awe of what you've created and the ability that you have to just connect to the bigger vision of it all and not get drowned not to drown in the weeds of it, and to really manage the personal brand with the service oriented like community that you want to create. So I'm so grateful to know you, and thank you for coming on today's show.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun to chat about, and I loved all of the topics we got to delve into. So thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yes, more to come.
More to come.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you want to get access to all the cool resources that we talked about and join Emily's WMNûP community for just $97 a month, then head over to theprofitablecoach.com/047. There you can get access to Emily, go follow her online, see what she's all about. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's been tuning in over the past year. We are almost at a year's worth of episodes on this show, and I want to do something really special to celebrate. So if you are someone who's been listening from the beginning, do me a favor, shoot me a DM over on Instagram at @TheKimberlyRich. You can follow Transformation Academy at Transformation Academy Online over on Instagram, and just let us know what it is that you have learned from the show, what it is that you appreciate about the episodes. And to every person who has sent us a DM or left a review, we're going to do a raffle, and we're going to offer something really special. So I hope that's you. Again, if you want to follow Emily over at profitablecoach.com/047, you'll get access to all the information from today's show. Sending you guys big, big love, and we will catch you on next week's episode.